In her San Francisco tech company, a successful entrepreneur was about to receive a devastating phone call. What started as celebrating her revolutionary app launch took a shocking turn when she discovered her parents' true feelings about her generosity. Emma Watson wasn't your typical CEO. For 5 years, she had quietly sent her parents $10,000 monthly, known for her unwavering family devotion. When she overheard her parents dismissing her as a guaranteed ATM, saying, "She'll pay for everything anyway," she had no idea this moment would force an impossible choice between financial slavery and self-respect. What began as filial duty would become a battle for her soul. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The champagne bubbles caught the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows of Watson Technology's 32nd floor conference room, creating tiny prisms that danced across the polished mahogany table. Emma Watson stood at the head of the room, her navy blazer perfectly tailored, her smile genuine but measured as she raised her glass to the assembled team of engineers, designers, and marketing executives who had made this moment possible. "To Mindbridge," she said, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had built this company from a dorm room idea into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. And to proving that mental health support doesn't have to be complicated to be transformative. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Emma watched as her team celebrated. These brilliant minds who had spent 18 months perfecting an app that could detect early signs of depression and anxiety through speech pattern analysis. The tech press had already dubbed it revolutionary. 3 major healthcare systems had signed contracts before the official launch. Her investors were ecstatic. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, Emma felt the familiar weight settling across her shoulders. The invisible burden of always having to be more, do more, prove more. "Emma, TechCrunch wants a statement," called Sarah from marketing, her laptop balanced precariously on her hip as she navigated through the celebration. "And the Wall Street Journal is requesting an interview for tomorrow's business section." Emma nodded, automatically shifting into the role she'd perfected over 7 years of building Watson Technologies. Professional, gracious, humble enough to seem relatable, confident enough to inspire investment. It was a performance she'd mastered, even as it exhausted her. James Kim appeared at her elbow, 2 glasses of champagne in hand, despite the fact that neither of them typically drank during business hours. His tie was slightly loosened, the only sign that her usually impeccable business partner was allowing himself to truly celebrate. "Mandatory celebration drink," he said, pressing a glass into her hand. "Company policy. I just made it up." Emma accepted the champagne, grateful for James's ability to read her moods after 12 years of friendship. They'd been roommates at Stanford, studying computer science while she worked 3 jobs to pay for textbooks, and he dealt with his own family's expectations about becoming a doctor instead of a computer person. "The downloads are already hitting 10,000, James continued, checking his phone. "At this rate, we'll hit our first quarter projections by next week." Around them, the celebration continued. Emma's employees, her team, really, because she'd never been comfortable with the hierarchical distance that employees implied, shared stories about the late nights, the coding marathons, the moments when they'd thought the project might collapse entirely. These were her people, the family she'd chosen and built through shared purpose and mutual respect. Her phone buzzed against the conference table where she'd left it during her speech. The display showed Mom, with a photo of Linda Chen in her best dress, taken at last year's Chinese New Year celebration. "Go ahead," James said, noticing her glance. "I'll handle the media requests for another few minutes." Emma stepped toward the windows, where the afternoon sun cast long shadows across downtown San Francisco. She could see the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance, its orange towers rising through the fog that was just beginning to roll in from the Pacific. "Hi, Mom. Emma." "Congratulations on your new app." Linda's voice carried its usual mix of pride and something else, an undertone Emma had never quite been able to identify. "We saw the news story online. Very impressive." "Thank you." It's been a long project, but the team really pulled together. Emma found herself automatically downplaying her role, a habit formed over decades of family interactions. Good. Your father and I are very proud. There was a pause, filled with the background noise of what sounded like a television. When are you coming to visit? It's been almost 2 months. The familiar guilt settled in Emma's chest. 2 months wasn't actually that long, especially given her schedule, but she knew better than to point that out. I'm hoping to make it down next weekend, but Mrs. Chen from down the street asked about you yesterday. Her daughter just got married, you know. Beautiful ceremony. Very expensive, but worth it for family. Emma closed her eyes. Here it was, the subtle reminder that she was 32 and unmarried, that her success meant nothing without the traditional markers of a proper Chinese daughter's life. Husband, children, grandchildren for her parents to spoil and brag about. That's nice for them, Emma said carefully. Yes, well, family is everything, you know. Speaking of which, your cousin Kevin is getting married next month. The wedding is in 2 weeks. You must come. Mom, I don't know if I can. You must come, Linda repeated, her voice taking on the firm tone that Emma remembered from childhood. Family is family. They've already put you down for the dinner. Kevin specifically asked for you to be there. Emma glanced back at the celebration still in full swing behind her. James was demonstrating something on his phone to a group of engineers, probably showing off the app's user interface. These were the people who knew her best, who valued her for her mind and her leadership and her ability to see solutions where others saw only problems. But family was different. Family required different sacrifices. Of course, she heard herself saying. I'll be there. Wonderful. I'll tell Kevin. He'll be so pleased. Another pause. Oh, and Emma? You know your father's been having trouble with his back again. The insurance doesn't cover everything. Emma was already reaching for her laptop, muscle memory guiding her fingers to her banking app before her mother even finished the sentence. $10,000. The monthly transfer she'd been making for 5 years now, ever since Watson Technologies had become profitable enough to ease her parents' financial concerns. She'd never discussed the amount with them. She'd simply started sending it, treating it like any other business expense. Her parents' mortgage, their medical bills, their comfortable retirement, it had become as automatic as paying rent or buying groceries. Don't worry about it, Mom. I'll take care of everything. You're such a good daughter, Linda said, and Emma felt the familiar warm glow of parental approval. Your father and I are so grateful. Not every child would be so thoughtful. The transfer completed with a soft chime from her phone. $10,000, moved from her business account to her parents' checking account with the same ease as ordering coffee. Such a small gesture, really, given her current financial situation. The app launch alone would probably net her more money this quarter than her parents had made in their final working years combined. I love you, Mom, Emma said, and meant it even as something hollow echoed in her chest. We love you too, sweetheart. See you at the wedding. Emma ended the call and stood for a moment, looking out at the city she'd conquered through intelligence and determination and 18-hour days. Behind her, her team continued celebrating the success they'd built together. Ahead of her, the fog was thickening, beginning to swallow the bridge's towers. Everything okay? James appeared beside her, his expression concerned. Fine, Emma said automatically. Just family stuff. I need to go to my cousin's wedding in a couple weeks. James nodded, but his dark eyes remained focused on her face. They'd known each other too long for casual deflection to work completely. How are your parents doing? They're proud, Emma said, which was true as far as it went. Traditional, you know. They worry about me working too much, not settling down. And you're okay with that pressure? Emma turned back to the celebration, watching her team laugh and share stories and plan for the future they were building together. Here, she was valued for exactly who she was. Here, her worth wasn't measured by her willingness to conform to expectations or her ability to provide financial security for others. They sacrificed a lot for me, she said, the words coming out with practiced ease. They immigrated here with nothing, worked factory jobs so I could have opportunities they never had. Supporting them now is it's what family does. James was quiet for a moment, his gaze thoughtful. My parents sacrificed a lot too, he said finally. But they've never made me feel like I owe them my life for it. Before Emma could respond, Sarah appeared again, this time with a tablet showing real-time download statistics and a list of interview requests that stretched down the screen. Emma, I hate to interrupt, but we really need those statements. And there's someone from Forbes on line 2. Emma straightened her blazer and smiled, sliding back into the professional persona that felt both natural and exhausting. Of course. James, can you handle the team celebration? I'll take the calls in my office. As she walked toward the door, her phone buzzed with a text message. Her cousin Kevin, sending a photo of wedding invitations with golden script and her name printed in elegant lettering under quote, family table. Another performance. Another opportunity to be the successful daughter, the generous cousin, the family member who had made it, and could therefore be counted on to contribute to everyone else's milestones and celebrations. Emma tucked her phone away and headed for her office, where Forbes was waiting to interview the brilliant entrepreneur who had just launched a revolutionary mental health app. She would tell them about her vision for accessible healthcare, her commitment to using technology for social good, her plans for expanding into new markets. She would not tell them about the $10,000 she sent home every month, or the way her parents' approval felt both essential and somehow never quite enough. She would not mention the exhaustion that came from constantly proving herself worthy of love through achievement and generosity. Success, Emma had learned, was its own kind of performance. And like any good performer, she had mastered the art of never letting the audience see the effort it took to make everything look effortless. But as she settled behind her desk and prepared to explain her company's mission to yet another journalist, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere along the way, she'd lost track of the difference between being valued and being needed, between earning love and buying it. The Forbes interview would go well, the app would be a massive success, and in 2 weeks, she would smile and celebrate at Kevin's wedding, playing the role of the perfect daughter, while her parents basked in the reflected glory of her achievements. It was what family did, after all, even when it felt like drowning in golden light. The Forbes interview had gone well. Brilliant insights about mental health accessibility, strategic vision for global expansion, the usual polished responses that had made Emma a darling of the tech press. But now, 48 hours later, she sat in her apartment's home office staring at a client crisis that threatened to unravel 3 months of careful negotiation. Emma, we need to talk about the Peterson Group contract, came James's voice through her Bluetooth headset as she scrolled through increasingly frantic emails. They're threatening to pull out over the data security protocols. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency, pulling up technical specifications while simultaneously checking her calendar. The wedding was in 12 days. She still needed to buy gifts, book her hotel, and somehow resolve this client emergency before Kevin's big day. Tell them we'll implement the additional encryption layers, Emma said, her phone balanced between her shoulder and ear as she opened a new browser tab, and schedule a call with their technical team for tomorrow morning. I'll walk them through the architecture personally. That'll cost us about $50,000 in development time, James warned. It's worth it to keep them happy. Emma's attention was already divided, her other hand navigating to Tiffany's website. The familiar weight of obligation pressed against her chest as she scrolled through jewelry options. Something elegant for her mother. Something that would make Linda's eyes light up with the particular pride that came from having a successful daughter who remembered what mattered. She added a pearl necklace to her cart, $2,000, which felt appropriately generous without being ostentatious. Her mother had always loved pearls. Emma? You still there? Sorry, James. Just handling some family stuff for the wedding. She minimized the shopping tab and refocused on the Peterson Group's contract terms. This was what her life looked like now. A constant juggling act between professional excellence and family expectations, each demanding her full attention while the other waited impatiently in the background. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Sophie's name appeared on the screen, accompanied by a photo of her younger sister in her graduation cap from last year, the PhD in environmental science, that Emma had quietly funded through 3 years of additional stipends and conference fees. "One second, James. Sophie's calling." Emma switched lines, grateful for a break from contract negotiations. "Hey, sis. How's the dissertation defense prep going?" "Slowly," Sophie admitted, her voice carrying the particular exhaustion of someone deep in academic pressure. "But I wanted to talk to you about Kevin's wedding. Are you really planning to stay at the Marriott? Mom's been going on about how it would look to have you staying at a hotel when there's family nearby." Emma leaned back in her ergonomic chair, watching the San Francisco fog roll across her neighborhood through her apartment's large windows. "I need the quiet to work. You know how weddings get. Everyone wants to catch up, ask about my company, discuss my non-existent love life." "Fair point." Sophie paused. "Speaking of which, Mom's been dropping hints about bringing a +1. Please tell me you're not going to manufacture a boyfriend for the weekend." "God, no. I learned that lesson at Uncle Mike's anniversary party." Emma switched back to her laptop, adding a Rolex Submariner to another shopping cart. Her father had always admired quality watches, though he'd never owned anything more expensive than a Seiko from Costco. "I'll just deflect and change the subject to Kevin's happiness." "Smart strategy? Oh, and Emma?" Sophie's voice grew quieter, more serious. "Thank you for the conference funding last month. The paper I presented in Denver. It wouldn't have happened without your support." The gratitude in her sister's voice created the familiar warm glow Emma had come to associate with family approval. This was why she worked so hard, why she'd built Watson Technologies into something that could support not just her own dreams, but everyone else's too. Sophie's research on sustainable farming practices would probably help feed thousands of people someday. Her parents' comfortable retirement allowed them to enjoy their golden years without the grinding worry about money that had defined their immigrant experience. "You don't need to thank me," Emma said automatically. "That's what family does." But even as she spoke the words, something nagged at her, a memory that surfaced unbidden from her college years. She'd been working at a campus coffee shop, pulling double shifts to afford textbooks, when her parents had called to complain about her grades. "You spend too much time on these jobs," her father had said. "Focus on school." We didn't come to America so our daughter could waste time making coffee. The irony hadn't been lost on her even then. Her parents wanted her to focus on academics, but someone had to pay for the privilege of focusing. Her scholarships covered tuition, but textbooks, housing, food, those expenses fell to her minimum wage jobs and careful budgeting. "Emma?" Sophie's voice pulled her back to the present. "You went quiet." "Sorry. Just thinking about the old days. Remember when Dad used to complain about me working too much in college?" Sophie laughed, but it sounded forced. "He was just worried about your health. You know how traditional he is about these things. Parents should provide, children should study. Right?" Emma added a silk scarf to her mother's gift selection, something cheerful and expensive that would photograph well when Linda inevitably showed it off to her friends. It's funny how perspectives change when you actually have money to help with those things. "Emma," Sophie's tone grew cautious. "You know they appreciate everything you do, right? I mean, they don't always express it the way you might want, but of course they appreciate it." Emma's response came quickly, practiced. She'd had this conversation with herself countless times, usually late at night when the monthly transfers felt less like generosity and more like, "What? Insurance? Payment for services rendered? They sacrificed everything for our opportunities. This is just me giving back." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her laptop chimed with another urgent email from the Peterson group. James was probably wondering where she'd disappeared to. The wedding gifts in her shopping carts totaled nearly $4,000, more than most people spent on rent, but a fraction of what her parents' monthly support cost her. "I should go," Emma said. "Client crisis. But I'll see you at the wedding." "Wouldn't miss it. Love you, sis." "Love you too." Emma ended the call and stared at her reflection in her laptop screen. Successful entrepreneur, devoted daughter, generous sister. The roles felt both natural and exhausting, like wearing perfectly tailored clothes that somehow never quite fit right. She completed her purchases with the efficiency of someone who'd turned gift-giving into a business process. Express shipping, gift wrapping, personal notes that struck the right balance of humility and affection. Her parents would be pleased. Kevin would be touched by her thoughtfulness. The extended family would nod approvingly at her continued success and generosity. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Don't forget to call your father tonight. He has something important to discuss with you." Emma's stomach tightened with familiar anxiety. Important discussions with her father usually involved either criticism disguised as concern or requests disguised as suggestions. But family was family, and successful daughters answered when their parents called. She switched back to James's line, where he'd been patiently waiting for 15 minutes. "Sorry about that. Where were we with Peterson?" "Emma?" James's voice carried a note of concern she'd been hearing more frequently lately. "Are you sure you're okay? You seem scattered." Emma pulled up the contract specifications, her professional competence sliding back into place like armor. "I'm fine. Just wedding stress. You know how family events can be." But as she dove back into technical discussions and client management, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere along the way, her life had become a series of performances designed to meet everyone else's expectations. And the most troubling part wasn't the performing itself. She'd always been good at that. The troubling part was that she'd begun to forget which version of herself was real. The crystalline chandeliers of the Fairmont Grand Ballroom cast warm light across 200 wedding guests, their conversations creating a gentle hum that mixed with the string quartet's rendition of classical love songs. Emma stood near the cocktail reception's edge, champagne flute in hand, watching her cousin Kevin beam as relatives congratulated him on finding such a lovely bride. She'd arrived an hour early, as always, to help with last-minute details that somehow became her responsibility without anyone explicitly asking. The upgraded flower arrangements, her suggestion, and her credit card. The premium bar service, quietly handled when she'd overheard her aunt worrying about costs. The photographer's overtime fee for extended reception coverage, resolved with a discreet conversation and another electronic transfer. "Emma, there's our tech genius." Uncle Robert's voice boomed across the reception area. As he approached with his wife and two other couples Emma vaguely recognized from previous family gatherings. "We were just talking about that new app of yours. Very impressive stuff." Emma smiled graciously, automatically downplaying her achievement. "Thank you, Uncle Robert. It's really the team that deserves credit. I just help coordinate everything." "Nonsense," Aunt Margaret chimed in. "We saw the news article. Don't be so modest." "Your parents must be so proud," their daughter on the front page of the business section. From across the room, Emma caught sight of her parents holding court near the head table. Her mother wore the pearl necklace Emma had sent, and it caught the light beautifully against her emerald dress. Her father's new Rolex glinted as he gestured expressively, probably telling the story of Emma's latest success to anyone who would listen. "They are proud," Emma agreed, watching her parents bask in the reflected glory. "They've always supported my dreams." The conversation flowed predictably. Questions about her company's growth, gentle inquiries about her personal life, the inevitable comparisons to other successful family members. Emma navigated it all with practiced ease, deflecting praise while ensuring everyone felt heard and valued. "Emma, dear, could you help with something?" Her mother appeared at her elbow, voice sweet but carrying an undertone Emma recognized. "The caterer is asking about the final head count for dinner. Apparently there's some confusion about the seating arrangements." Emma excused herself from the group and followed her mother toward the venue coordinator station. As they walked, Linda's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "The flowers look beautiful, by the way." Kevin's mother-in-law was asking where they came from. She was so impressed with the upgrade. "I'm glad everyone likes them," Emma replied, though something in her mother's tone made her cautious. "And the photographer mentioned you've arranged for extended coverage." That was thoughtful. These moments are so precious. Emma nodded, beginning to see the pattern. Her discreet contributions hadn't been quite as discreet as she'd hoped. Her family knew exactly who was quietly ensuring their celebrations went smoothly. "You're such a good daughter," Linda continued, her hand briefly touching Emma's arm. "Always thinking of family first." The words should have felt like praise. Instead, they settled in Emma's chest like a weight she couldn't quite name. The reception had reached that perfect moment where champagne loosened tongues and old family stories emerged like butterflies from cocoons. Emma had spent the last hour graciously accepting congratulations, dodging questions about her love life, and watching her parents work the room like seasoned politicians, each conversation somehow steering back to their daughter's remarkable success. The terrace offered escape from the increasingly warm ballroom, its stone balustrade overlooking the hotel's manicured gardens. Emma stepped outside, champagne flute forgotten on a nearby table, grateful for the cool evening air against her skin. The string quartet's music drifted through the open doors behind her, mixing with the distant hum of city traffic. She pulled out her phone, checking messages from her team about the Peterson Group contract. Even at family celebrations, work provided a familiar anchor. Problems she could solve. Success she'd earned entirely through her own merit. "Don't worry about the cost, I told you. She'll pay for everything anyway." Her mother's voice carried on the night breeze from somewhere around the corner of the terrace. Emma froze, her thumb hovering over her phone screen. "Linda, you can't just assume." Mrs. Park's familiar voice tinged with concern. "Assume what? She's been sending us $10,000 a month for years. Never complains, never asks questions. It's automatic." Linda's tone carried a casual certainty that made Emma's stomach clench. "Kevin's graduation party next month, your grandson's medical bills, the family reunion in August. She'll cover whatever we need." Emma's breath caught. She pressed herself against the terrace wall, hidden by the shadows cast by an ornamental trellis. "But Linda," came another voice, "Aunt Margaret, that's a lot to expect from one person, even if she is successful." "Expect?" David's voice joined the conversation, carrying the edge of defensive pride. Emma knew too well. "She owes us. We sacrificed everything, came to this country with nothing, worked factory jobs so she could have opportunities. Now she makes millions, and we're supposed to what? Struggle on Social Security? She can afford it." Emma's champagne flute would have shattered if she'd still been holding it. Her hands trembled as she gripped the stone balustrade. "Still," Mrs. Park said carefully, "she's such a sweet girl, always so generous, so respectful. You're lucky to have a daughter who cares so much about family." Linda's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Sweet? She barely visits anymore. Too busy with her company, her important meetings. 32 years old and no husband, no children. What kind of daughter puts career before family?" "The selfish kind," David added. "She thinks money is enough, writes a check, and considers her duty done. Meanwhile, we sit at home alone, watching other families enjoy their grandchildren." Emma felt the world tilt beneath her feet. 5 years of monthly transfers. 5 years of believing she was helping, giving back, showing love through the only language that seemed to matter to them. "At least the money's reliable," Linda continued. "I told Kevin not to worry about the graduation expenses. I told your sister about Tommy's surgery costs. Emma will handle it. She always does." "She doesn't have a choice." David's voice carried grim satisfaction. "Family is family. She understands her obligations, even if she doesn't understand love." The conversation continued, but Emma could no longer process the words. Her parents' voices blurred into white noise as 27 years of childhood memories rewrote themselves in her mind. Every achievement dismissed as, quote, expected. Every sacrifice they'd made weaponized into permanent debt. Every generous gesture reduced to obligation and duty. She'd been buying tolerance, not earning love. Purchasing peace, not building relationships. "Emma?" Mrs. Park's voice, much closer now. "Dear, are you all right? You look pale." Emma turned to find the older woman standing in the terrace doorway, concern etched across her weathered features. Behind her, the reception continued in blissful ignorance. Kevin and his bride dancing their first dance while family members swayed and smiled. "I'm fine," Emma managed, though her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. Just needed some air. "Your parents are so proud of you," Mrs. Park said warmly, apparently unaware that Emma had overheard the entire conversation. "They were just telling us about your wonderful success. Such devoted parents, always bragging about their brilliant daughter." Emma stared at the woman who'd accidentally shattered her world, then looked past her to where her parents stood near the dance floor, accepting congratulations on behalf of their accomplished child. The performance would continue. The bills would be paid. The family would smile and celebrate and pretend that love flowed naturally between them. But Emma finally understood the price of admission to this particular show. And for the first time in her adult life, she wondered if she could afford to keep paying it. Emma's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel, her BMW navigating the familiar streets of her childhood neighborhood on autopilot. She'd left the wedding without saying goodbye, mumbling excuses about a work emergency to anyone who asked. The 2-hour drive from the hotel to her parents' house had passed in a blur of streetlights and fractured thoughts. It was nearly midnight when she pulled into the driveway of the modest ranch house her monthly payments had helped them keep. The porch light was on, her mother's habit from decades of waiting for family to come home safely. Through the living room window, Emma could see the blue glow of the television, probably tuned to one of her father's late-night news programs. Her phone had buzzed 17 times during the drive. Messages from Sophie asking if she was okay. A text from Kevin thanking her for the incredible wedding gift. 3 missed calls from James, probably wondering why she'd disappeared from what should have been a celebration. Emma sat in her car for 10 minutes, watching the house where she'd grown up, believing that love was earned through achievement, that family loyalty meant never questioning the cost of belonging. The house her money now helped maintain, while its occupants discussed her selfishness and counted her contributions like a guaranteed income stream. The front door wasn't locked. It never was in this neighborhood where her parents had found their version of the American dream. Emma let herself in, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors she'd helped refinish 2 years ago when her father's back problems made home maintenance impossible. "Emma?" Her mother's voice called from the living room, surprised but pleased. "What are you doing here so late? I thought you were staying at the hotel." Linda Chen appeared in the hallway wearing her faded pink robe, her face brightening with the automatic smile Emma had once believed was pure maternal joy. Behind her, David emerged from his recliner, muting the television and adjusting his glasses. "We need to talk." Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt, though her hands remained clenched at her sides. "Of course, sweetheart. Come sit down. Are you hungry? I have leftover." "I heard you tonight." The words cut through her mother's hospitality like a blade. "On the terrace, talking to Mrs. Park and Aunt Margaret." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Linda's smile flickered, and David's expression shifted from welcome to wariness. "Heard what?" Linda asked, but her tone had changed, become careful in a way that confirmed Emma's worst fears. "That I'll pay for everything anyway. That I'm selfish for not visiting more, for not giving you grandchildren. That family is family and I don't have a choice." Emma's voice grew stronger with each word, years of suppressed hurt finally finding release. "That I owe you because of your sacrifices." Her parents exchanged a look, the kind of silent communication that comes from 40 years of marriage and shared secrets. "Emma, you're taking things out of context," David said, his voice carrying the authoritative tone that had ended arguments throughout her childhood. "We were just talking." People say things they don't mean when they're socializing. "Which part didn't you mean? The part where you called me selfish? Or the part where you've already promised other people that I'll pay for their expenses?" Linda moved to the couch, gesturing for Emma to join her. "Sit down, sweetheart." "You're upset. Let's discuss this calmly." "I've been calm for 5 years." The words exploded from Emma's chest. 5 years of sending you $10,000 every month. 5 years of believing I was helping, showing love, taking care of family. And all that time, you've been... Her voice cracked. "You've been treating me like your personal ATM." "That's not true," Linda protested, but her eyes couldn't meet Emma's. "We're grateful for everything you do." "You know that." Grateful? Emma laughed, and the sound was bitter even to her own ears. You just spent an hour complaining about how I never visit while simultaneously planning how to spend my money on other people's problems. David's face flushed red, his pride finally overriding his caution. You think we wanted to depend on our daughter? You think this is easy for us? We worked ourselves to the bone in factories so you could have opportunities we never had. We sacrificed our health, our dreams, our retirement savings. Everything we did was for you. And now I'm supposed to pay for those sacrifices for the rest of my life? You're supposed to honor your family. David's voice rose, carrying echoes of every guilt-laden conversation they'd ever had. In our culture, children take care of their parents. It's not optional. It's duty. Emma felt something crack inside her chest. Not her heart breaking, but rather some invisible chain that had bound her to this dynamic for 32 years. Duty, she repeated softly. Not love, not choice, duty. Emma, please, Linda tried again, reaching for her daughter's hand. You're being dramatic. We love you. We've always loved you. Emma pulled her hand away. You love what I provide. There's a difference. She stood up, moving toward the kitchen, where the monthly calendar still hung on the refrigerator, the same spot it had occupied throughout her childhood. Her parents followed, their voices overlapping in a chorus of justification and guilt. You don't understand what we've been through. We only want what's best for you. This is how families work. Emma turned to face them, and something in her expression made them fall silent. I'm done, she said quietly. The monthly payments stop now. No more automatic transfers. No more guaranteed income. If you need help with specific expenses, you can ask like any other adult, and I'll decide whether to help based on the situation. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma, you can't be serious, Linda whispered. We depend on that money. The house payment, the insurance, your father's medications. Then you'll figure it out. The same way every other retiree in America figures it out. David's face had gone from red to purple. You ungrateful. After everything we've done for you. Everything you chose to do for me, Emma corrected. And I've been grateful. 5 years of gratitude, paid in monthly installments. But gratitude has limits, and I've finally found mine. She walked toward the front door, her parents trailing behind her with increasing desperation. Emma, please, think about this reasonably. You can't just abandon family. This is temporary, right? You're just upset. Emma paused at the threshold, looking back at the two people who had shaped her understanding of love, success, and worth. They looked smaller now, older, stripped of the authority that had governed her choices for so long. I love you, she said, and meant it despite everything. But I won't be used anymore. When you're ready to have a relationship based on respect instead of obligation, call me. She closed the door behind her and walked to her car, leaving 32 years of conditioning in the house with the porch light that had always promised safe harbor but had never quite delivered on that promise. The drive back to the city passed in complete silence. But for the first time in years, Emma felt like she could finally breathe. Emma's apartment felt different when she returned at 3 a.m, larger somehow, as if the confrontation with her parents had removed invisible walls that had been closing in on her for years. She sat on her leather couch in the dark, still wearing her wedding dress, staring at her phone as 17 missed calls accumulated into a digital avalanche of family crisis. The first message was from Sophie, time-stamped just 2 hours after Emma had left the wedding. Where did you go? Mom called looking for you. She sounded upset. The messages escalated from there, her mother's voice increasingly frantic. Emma, please call us back. We need to talk about tonight. There's been a misunderstanding. Uncle Robert, your parents are worried sick. Whatever happened, I'm sure we can work it out. Family is family. Aunt Margaret, Emma dear, your mother is crying. Please don't let pride destroy your relationship with your parents. And finally, at 2:47 a.m., David's voice, tight with controlled anger. You think you can just walk away from your responsibilities? We'll see about that. Emma set the phone aside and walked to her bathroom, mechanically removing her makeup and changing into comfortable clothes. In the mirror, she looked like herself again, Not the polished daughter performing at family events. Not the successful entrepreneur managing expectations. Just Emma Watson at 32, finally understanding the difference between love and transaction. Her laptop chimed with an incoming video call. James's name appeared on the screen, his concerned face filling the frame when she accepted. Emma, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for hours. Sophie called me looking for you. What the hell happened? The concern in his voice, genuine worry for her well-being rather than disappointment in her behavior, nearly broke her composure. I found out some things about my family tonight. About what they really think of me. James was quiet for a moment, studying her face through the screen. Do you want to talk about it? So Emma told him. Everything. The overheard conversation, the confrontation, the years of believing she was showing love when she was really just subsidizing her parents' comfort while they criticized her life choices behind her back. Jesus, Emma. James ran a hand through his hair. I'm so sorry. But honestly, I'm also proud of you. Proud? Emma's laugh was hollow. I just nuked my relationship with my parents over money. No, you stood up for yourself after years of being taken advantage of. There's a difference. Before Emma could respond, her phone rang. Sophie's name on the screen, calling at nearly 4 a.m. I should take this, Emma said to James. Sophie's probably caught in the middle of whatever fallout is happening. Her sister's voice was exhausted, strained. Emma, what did you do? Mom's been calling me hysterically for hours. She says you're cutting them off financially? That you accuse them of using you? Emma felt the familiar weight of family guilt settling on her shoulders. Sophie, I overheard them tonight. At the wedding. They were talking about me like I was their personal bank account. But, Emma... Sophie's voice grew quiet. They're panicking. Dad's medications alone cost $800 a month. The house payment is $2,200. Without your help, they'll have to figure it out like every other couple their age. Emma interrupted, though the words felt harsh even to her. They have Social Security, Dad's pension from the factory. They're not destitute. But they've gotten used to a certain lifestyle. Mom's already talking about having to sell the house, move to a smaller place. She's heartbroken. The manipulation was so subtle, so expertly deployed, that Emma almost fell for it. Almost. But James's presence on the video call, his supportive expression, reminded her that concern could exist without strings attached. Sophie, can I ask you something? When was the last time Mom or Dad called just to see how you were doing? Not about money, not about family obligations. Just to check in on your life. The silence stretched long enough to provide the answer. That's not fair, Sophie said finally. They show love differently. They're from a different generation, a different culture. And I'm from this generation, this culture, where love isn't measured in monthly bank transfers. Emma, please. They raised us, sacrificed for us. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for gratitude, which I've shown for 5 years. But gratitude doesn't mean surrendering my autonomy forever. Sophie was crying now, quiet tears that Emma could hear through the phone. What am I supposed to tell them? They're talking about calling other family members, having an intervention. Uncle Robert is already taking Dad's side. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the family closing ranks around her parents' version of events. She was becoming the villain in a story where she'd thought she was the hero. Tell them I love them. But love isn't supposed to come with invoices. After ending the call, Emma looked back at James on her laptop screen. His expression was gentle but determined. Emma, what you did tonight. It was the right thing. It's going to be hard, and your family is going to make it harder. But you can't build authentic relationships on financial obligation. Then why does it feel like I just destroyed everything? Because, James said softly, sometimes the right thing and the easy thing are completely different. And sometimes families have to break apart before they can heal. Emma nodded, though healing felt impossibly distant as her phone continued buzzing with increasingly desperate messages from relatives who'd chosen sides in a war she'd never wanted to fight. Outside her window, San Francisco was waking up to another day. But for Emma, everything had changed in the space of one overheard conversation and one impossible choice between love and respect. 3 weeks had passed since the confrontation, and Emma had learned that cutting off financial support was only the beginning of the war. Her parents had deployed every weapon in their emotional arsenal: guilt, manipulation, and the nuclear option of family loyalty. But Emma's resolve had held firm through each assault. Until her phone rang at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday with Linda's voice, raw with panic. "Emma, you need to come to the hospital right now." "Your father," her mother's voice broke. "He's had a heart attack. We're at UCSF Medical Center. Please, Emma, please come." The drive across the city passed in a blur of early morning traffic and racing thoughts. Emma's hands gripped the steering wheel as conflicting emotions warred in her chest. Genuine fear for her father's health battled with cynical suspicion about the timing. 3 weeks of radio silence, and now suddenly a medical emergency that demanded her immediate presence. But family was family, even when family used your love as a weapon. The cardiac unit waiting room smelled of disinfectant and fear. Emma found her mother slumped in a plastic chair, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her carefully maintained appearance cracked by hours of hospital fluorescent lighting. Sophie sat beside her, looking exhausted and relieved when Emma appeared. "How is he?" Emma asked, settling into the chair across from them. "Stable," Sophie said quietly. "It was minor, what they call a mild myocardial infarction. But Emma, he collapsed at home around midnight. Mom found him on the kitchen floor." Linda looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and accusatory. "He's been under so much stress lately. Worrying about money, about the house payments, about how we're going to manage without—" She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. "Mom," Sophie warned softly. "Without what?" Emma asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Without learning to budget on a fixed income like millions of other retirees?" Linda's face crumpled. "How can you be so cold? Your father is lying in there with wires attached to his chest, and you're talking about budgets?" Emma felt the familiar guilt pressing against her ribs, but this time she recognized it for what it was: emotional manipulation disguised as maternal grief. "I'm here, aren't I? I drove across the city at 7 in the morning because I was worried about Dad. But his heart attack doesn't change the conversation we had 3 weeks ago." "What conversation?" The voice came from behind them. Uncle Robert stood in the waiting room entrance, his expression grim. "Emma, your parents called me. They're devastated. Your father's doctor said stress was a contributing factor to this episode." Emma's stomach clenched. The family reinforcements had arrived. "Uncle Robert, I appreciate your concern, but this is between me and my parents." "Like hell it is." Robert moved closer, his voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. "Your parents raised you, sacrificed for you, gave you every opportunity. And when they need you most, you abandon them over money?" "I didn't abandon them. I stopped enabling their financial dependence." "Same thing," Robert snapped. "You think your fancy tech job makes you better than family? Your father worked in factories for 30 years so you could have the privilege of looking down on the people who made your success possible." Sophie stood up, positioning herself between Emma and Robert. "Uncle Robert, please. This isn't helping anyone." But the damage was spreading. Emma could see other family members filtering into the waiting room. Aunt Margaret, Cousin Kevin still in his work clothes, Mrs. Park clutching a thermos of coffee and wearing the expression of someone attending a funeral. "Emma," Mrs. Park approached carefully, "I'm so sorry about your father. These family disagreements, they're so painful. Surely you can work things out." The older woman's gentle tone was harder to deflect than Robert's anger. Emma found herself surrounded by a circle of concerned faces, all united in their certainty that she was wrong, selfish, ungrateful. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," Emma said, her voice quieter now. "But I can't continue a relationship based on financial obligation." "It's not obligation," Linda's voice rose from her chair. It's love. It's family. It's honoring the people who gave you life. And what about honoring me? Emma's composure finally cracked. What about respecting my right to choose how I express love? What about acknowledging that I've been generous beyond any reasonable expectation for 5 years? Generous? David's voice, weak but angry, came from the waiting room entrance. He stood in a hospital wheelchair pushed by a nurse, IV lines trailing from his arm, his face pale but his eyes fierce. You called doing your duty generous? Dad, you should be resting, Sophie started. I should be talking sense into my daughter before she destroys this family completely. David's gaze fixed on Emma. 32 years I've been your father. 32 years of working myself into the ground so you could have opportunities I never had. And when I ask for basic respect, basic care in my old age, you call it manipulation? Emma knelt beside his wheelchair, her voice gentle despite the anger churning in her chest. Dad, I never said I wouldn't help with legitimate medical expenses. If you need heart medication, physical therapy, follow-up care, I'll pay for it directly. But I won't resume the monthly allowance that lets you promise other people that I'll cover their expenses too. David's expression shifted, hope flickering in his eyes. So you'll help with the medical bills? Of course. I'll call the billing department today and set up direct payment for anything insurance doesn't cover. And the house payment? The car insurance? Your mother's prescription costs? Emma stood up slowly, understanding the trap that had been laid. Those aren't medical expenses, Dad. Those are living expenses you need to manage with your pension and Social Security. The hope in David's eyes died, replaced by cold fury. So my heart attack means nothing to you. My health crisis is just another opportunity to punish us for speaking honestly about our ungrateful daughter. David, please, the nurse intervened. Your blood pressure is elevated. You need to return to your room. As her father was wheeled away, Emma looked around the waiting room at the faces of her extended family. Some showed disappointment, others outright hostility. Only Sophie met her eyes with anything approaching understanding. Emma, Aunt Margaret said softly, your father nearly died tonight. Doesn't that change anything for you? Emma felt the weight of 32 years of family conditioning pressing down on her, demanding that she cave, apologize, resume the payments that had bought her this dysfunctional version of love. Instead, she picked up her purse and walked toward the exit. Where are you going? Linda called after her. To set up direct payment with the hospital billing department, Emma replied without turning around. Because I love my father and want him to get the medical care he needs. But I won't be manipulated into resuming financial support because of a health crisis that you're already using as emotional leverage. Emma left the hospital knowing she'd passed some invisible test, but uncertain whether she'd passed or failed it in the eyes of the people whose approval had shaped her entire life. As she drove back across the city, her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Dad's okay, tests look good, but Emma, they're not going to forgive this. Are you sure you're ready for what comes next? Emma looked at the message for a long moment before typing back. I've been getting ready my whole life. I just didn't know it until now. 6 months after her father's heart attack, Emma sat in Rachel Torres's office, watching rain streak down the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked downtown San Francisco. The therapist's office had become a sanctuary, the one place where Emma could examine her family dynamics without judgment, or the expectation that she should simply fix things by resuming her monthly payments. Tell me about the scholarship fund, Rachel said, settling back in her chair with the patient attentiveness that had helped Emma navigate the most turbulent period of her adult life. Emma smiled, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. We launched it last month, the Watson Foundation for first-generation college students. Full tuition, books, and living expenses for 20 students this year. No strings attached, no expectation that they'll owe me anything after graduation. How does it feel, channeling your generosity in this direction? Different, Emma admitted. Good. Different. When I send money to these students, I'm investing in their futures, not subsidizing dysfunction. They send thank you notes, study updates, photos from their dorm rooms. It feels like love flowing in the right direction. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. And your parents? The familiar weight settled in Emma's chest, though lighter now than it had been months ago. They're managing. Sophie told me they sold the house and moved into a smaller apartment. Dad's back to driving their old Honda instead of the BMW they'd been leasing. They're angry, but they're surviving. How do you feel about their anger? Emma was quiet for a moment, watching the rain. Sad, but not guilty anymore. There's a difference I couldn't see before. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. Coffee later? I have exciting news about the Peterson Group expansion. Emma smiled, typing back a quick yes. James had been her anchor through the family crisis, never once suggesting she should compromise her boundaries to restore peace. Their business partnership had deepened into something closer to genuine family, the kind built on mutual respect rather than obligation. I've been dating someone, Emma said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. Rachel's eyebrows rose slightly. Oh? His name is Michael. He's a veterinarian. We met at a coffee shop near his clinic. He doesn't know about my net worth yet, just that I run a tech company. He likes me for my terrible jokes and my ability to remember random facts about extinct species. How does that feel? Terrifying, Emma laughed. I keep waiting for him to want something from me, but he insists on splitting restaurant bills, and when I offered to pay for our weekend trip to Napa, he said he'd rather we go somewhere less expensive that we could both afford equally. That must be quite an adjustment. It is, but it's also peaceful. I don't have to perform for him. I don't have to prove my worth through generosity or success. He seems to just like spending time with me. Emma's phone rang. Sophie's name on the screen. These calls had become monthly check-ins, their relationship slowly rebuilding on more honest foundations. Hi, sis, Emma answered, putting the call on speaker with Rachel's permission. Hey, how are you doing? How's therapy? Good. Really good. How's the dissertation defense prep? Actually, that's why I'm calling. Sophie's voice carried excitement mixed with nervousness. I got the NSF fellowship. Full funding for my postdoc research at Stanford. I'll be able to finish my degree debt-free and start my career without depending on anyone. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Sophie, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without your support through grad school. But Emma, this fellowship means I won't need financial help anymore. I'll be independent. The words carried weight beyond their surface meaning. Sophie was choosing financial autonomy over the comfortable dependence their family system had encouraged. Are you sure? Emma asked. Because my offer to help with legitimate expenses still stands. I'm sure. I've been watching what you've gone through these past months, and I realized I never want to be in a position where someone can question my motives for loving them. Financial independence is worth more than financial comfort. After ending the call, Emma sat quietly for several minutes before Rachel spoke. How do you feel about Sophie's decision? Proud, scared for her, relieved? Emma paused. My parents are going to blame me for this too. They'll say I turned her against them. Will you let that change your boundaries? Emma considered the question seriously. 6 months ago, the thought of her parents' disappointment would have sent her reaching for her checkbook. Now, it simply felt like information, data about their worldview that she could acknowledge without internalizing. No, she said finally. Sophie's making her own choices based on her own values. That's what healthy adults do. And your parents? Emma sighed. They're adults too. They can choose to adapt to this new reality or stay angry about it. But their choice doesn't determine my actions anymore. Rachel smiled, the first time Emma had seen her break professional neutrality in 6 months of sessions. Emma, when you first came to see me, you described yourself as feeling like you were drowning in golden chains. How would you describe yourself now? Emma thought about the scholarship students sending her updates about their dreams coming true. About James's friendship that asked nothing of her except honesty. About Michael's contentment with quiet dinners and shared jokes. About Sophie choosing independence over comfort. Free, she said simply. For the first time in my adult life, I feel free. Outside, the rain was stopping, and week afternoon sunlight began filtering through the clouds. Emma had another hour of work, then coffee with James, then dinner with Michael at a small neighborhood restaurant where the servers knew her name but not her net worth. It wasn't the life her parents had envisioned for their successful daughter. But it was authentically hers, built on foundations of mutual respect rather than financial obligation. And for the first time since childhood, that felt like enough. The email arrived on a gray Tuesday morning in February, nearly a year after Emma had cut off her parents' monthly allowance. Sophie's name in the subject line, but the formal tone suggested this wasn't one of their regular sisterly check-ins. Emma, Mom and Dad have asked me to reach out to you. They want to meet. Just the four of us. They say they have something important to discuss and that they're ready to apologize. I think they mean it this time. Would you be willing to meet at the Marriott restaurant downtown? Neutral territory, public place. This Saturday at 2 p.m.? I really think they've changed. Please consider it. Love, Sophie. Emma stared at the screen for a long moment, her coffee growing cold as she weighed the request. In the past 11 months, her parents had tried various approaches. Guilt through relatives, manipulation through health scares, and finally, months of cold silence, punctuated only by formal birthday and holiday cards with their signatures but no personal messages. She forwarded the email to Rachel Torres with a note. Emergency session today, if possible. By noon, Emma sat in the familiar therapy office, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea as she processed the unexpected development. What's your gut reaction to the meeting request? Rachel asked. Suspicion, Emma admitted, but also hope? Which probably makes me an idiot. Hope doesn't make you an idiot. It makes you human. But what kind of outcome are you hoping for? Emma was quiet for several minutes. I keep imagining this conversation where they actually acknowledge what they did wrong. Where they say they understand why I needed boundaries. Where we figure out how to have a relationship based on respect instead of financial transactions. And what do you think is more likely? That they've learned to say the right words but haven't actually changed their fundamental attitudes. Emma sighed. But I have to try, don't I? If there's even a small chance they've genuinely reflected on their behavior. You don't have to do anything, Emma. But if you choose to meet with them, what boundaries will you need to maintain? By Saturday afternoon, Emma had her answer. She arrived at the Marriott's restaurant 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table with clear sightlines and easy access to the exit. Her hands were steady as she ordered water with lemon and checked her phone one final time before her parents arrived. Sophie appeared first, looking nervous but hopeful in a way that reminded Emma of their childhood. Behind her came David and Linda Chen, both looking older than Emma remembered, her father walking with a slight stoop that hadn't been there a year ago. Emma, her mother said softly, sliding into the chair across from her. Thank you for coming. The first 20 minutes felt like a carefully choreographed performance. Her parents took turns expressing regret for misunderstandings and acknowledging that they, quote, could have communicated better. David admitted that the stress of financial uncertainty had made him, quote, say things I didn't entirely mean. Linda tearfully explained how much she'd missed their relationship. Emma listened carefully, watching for signs of genuine change, while noting the careful language that avoided taking full responsibility. I appreciate you both saying this, Emma said when they'd finished their prepared remarks. But I need to understand what's actually different now. What have you learned about how your behavior affected me? Her parents exchanged a look, the same silent communication Emma had observed for 32 years. We learned that we took your generosity for granted, Linda said carefully, and that we should have expressed our gratitude more clearly. And, Emma prompted, and we understand that you felt unappreciated, David added, his tone suggesting he was reading from a script. Emma felt her heart sink. These were the right words, but they carried no genuine understanding of the deeper issues. What about the conversation I overheard at Kevin's wedding? About me being selfish, about guaranteeing other people that I'd pay for their expenses. Another exchanged look. We were just talking, Linda said defensively. People say things in casual conversation that they don't really mean. But you did mean it, Emma replied gently. And what hurt wasn't just what you said, it was the attitude behind it. The assumption that my money was your money, that my love could be measured by my willingness to fund your lifestyle. David's facade began to crack. Emma, we raised you. We sacrificed everything for your opportunities. Is it really so unreasonable to expect some security in our old age? There it was, the entitlement masquerading as reasonable expectation. Security and manipulation aren't the same thing, Dad. If you'd come to me and said, we're struggling financially, can you help us create a budget or assist with specific expenses? I would have gladly helped. But instead, you created a system where I was expected to pay without question while you criticized my life choices behind my back. That's not, Linda started. It is exactly that, Sophie interrupted quietly. I've been thinking about this for months, and Emma's right. You taught us that love was conditional on performance and generosity. Emma performed perfectly for years, and you still weren't satisfied. Linda turned to Sophie with betrayal in her eyes. You too? Are you going to abandon family as well? I'm not abandoning anyone, Sophie said firmly. But I'm also not going to pretend that unconditional financial support equals healthy family relationships. Emma watched her parents process Sophie's defection from their narrative. This wasn't going according to their plan. So what do you want from us? David asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. You want us to grovel? To pretend that children don't owe their parents anything? I want you to love me for who I am, not what I provide, Emma said simply. I want phone calls that ask about my life, not my willingness to fund family events. I want a relationship where my boundaries are respected, not constantly tested. And if we can't give you that? Linda's question was barely a whisper. Emma felt something settle in her chest. Not sadness, but a kind of peaceful acceptance. Then we'll have the relationship we can have, which might be holiday cards and brief conversations at family funerals. But I won't pretend it's something it isn't. Her parents sat in stunned silence. This wasn't the outcome they'd expected from their carefully planned reconciliation attempt. We're your parents, David said finally. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Emma replied. But being my parents doesn't give you unlimited access to my resources or my emotional energy. It gives you the opportunity to earn my respect and trust, just like any other relationship. Emma stood up, leaving money on the table to cover her water. I love you both. I'll always love you. But I won't sacrifice my self-respect to maintain a relationship that requires me to diminish myself. As she walked toward the exit, she heard Linda calling after her. Emma, please, can't we just go back to how things were? Emma paused at the restaurant entrance, looking back at the table where her family sat in the wreckage of their second chance. How things were wasn't working for me, she said gently. When you're ready for how things could be, call me. The February air was crisp as Emma walked to her car, her phone already buzzing with a text from Michael asking about dinner plans. She had a life to return to, one built on authenticity rather than obligation. Respect rather than transaction. It wasn't the reconciliation she'd hoped for, but it was the closure she'd needed. 18 months after the confrontation that changed everything, Emma stood in the Watson Technologies conference room, watching her team celebrate another successful product launch. But this time, the celebration felt different, lighter somehow, as if the weight she'd carried for so many years had finally lifted completely. The mental health accessibility framework is already being adopted by 3 major hospital systems, James announced to the room, raising his coffee mug in a mock toast. And Emma, the keynote speech you gave at the Healthcare Innovation Summit has generated 12 new partnership requests. Emma smiled, accepting the applause without the familiar undercurrent of anxiety that had once accompanied every success. There was no one she needed to prove herself to anymore. No invisible scorecard measuring her worth through achievement. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Dinner at 7? I'm making my famous terrible lasagna. Also, my mom called. She wants to know if you're free for their anniversary party next month. No pressure, but she specifically requested your stories about the time you accidentally crashed the Stanford computer lab. Emma typed back quickly, wouldn't miss it. And yes, to the terrible lasagna. Michael's family had embraced her with the kind of warmth she'd spent 32 years trying to earn elsewhere. They asked about her work because they were genuinely interested, not because they were calculating potential financial benefits. When his mother worried about the expense of their anniversary celebration, she'd quietly suggested potluck-style contributions, rather than assuming Emma would cover everything. Emma? Sophie's voice came from the conference room doorway. Do you have a minute? Emma's sister looked radiant, the glow of someone who'd found her professional calling. The NSF fellowship had led to a position at Stanford's Environmental Research Institute, where Sophie was developing sustainable farming techniques that could revolutionize agriculture in developing countries. I have exciting news, Sophie said as they stepped into Emma's office. I'm getting married. Emma's face broke into a genuine smile. Sophie, when? To whom? Tell me everything. His name is David. I know. Same name as Dad, but he's nothing like him. He's a renewable energy engineer I met at a conference. The wedding's in 6 months, and Emma... Sophie's voice grew serious. I want you to be my maid of honor. Of course, I'm honored. Emma paused. Have you told Mom and Dad? Sophie nodded. Her expression complicated. They're happy about the engagement, but they're already asking about wedding expenses, suggesting venues they can't afford, making assumptions about who's paying for what. And I told them David and I are paying for our own wedding, that we want something small and meaningful that reflects our values, not their social expectations. Sophie smiled ruefully. Mom cried. Dad gave me a lecture about family traditions. But Emma, I felt free. Like I was finally making choices based on my own priorities. Emma felt a surge of pride mixed with protective concern. Are you okay with their reaction? I'm sad, Sophie admitted. But I'm not guilty. You taught me there's a difference. They were interrupted by Emma's phone ringing. The caller ID showed Mom, which was unusual. Linda called Sophie regularly now, but Emma's relationship with their parents remained cordial but distant. Holiday cards, brief birthday calls, carefully neutral conversations that avoided any topic related to money or expectations. Hello, Mom. Emma. Linda's voice was different, softer, less calculating. I called to congratulate Sophie on her engagement. She told me you're going to be her maid of honor. I am. I'm very excited for her. There was a pause, filled with the weight of 18 months of careful distance. Emma, I want you to know, your father and I have been talking about the choices we made, the pressure we put on you. We still don't understand everything, but we're trying to. Emma felt her chest tighten with cautious hope. I appreciate that, Mom. We love you, Linda said simply, not for what you can do for us, just because you're our daughter. I should have said that more often. I love you too, Mom. It wasn't a full reconciliation. Too much had happened for that. But it was a beginning, a small crack in the wall that had grown between them. After ending the call, Emma looked out her office window at the city she'd conquered through her own merit, surrounded by people who valued her for herself, rather than her capacity to solve their problems. Her phone buzzed with a notification from the Watson Foundation. 20 scholarship recipients had sent updates about their progress. Photos from labs and libraries, stories of research projects and internships, gratitude that asked for nothing in return. This was what love looked like when it flowed freely, without transaction or obligation. This was what family could be when built on respect, rather than dependency. Emma gathered her things and headed home to Michael's terrible lasagna and his family's easy acceptance, to a life that finally felt authentically hers. For the first time since childhood, she was exactly where she belonged. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.